Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for another session of our life cycle of a order series. My name is Kelly Horton. I'm on the marketing team here, and I'm joined with Autumn Rexford, who's going to be our presenter today. Just before I hand it over to her, I'll do a quick housekeeping run through and a little overview about what we're going to see today, and then I'll hand it over to Autumn. But first, I do just want to cover a few housekeeping items. We will be sending out a recording to the webinar. We'll send an email to you typically within 24 hours. You'll get that in your inbox so you can watch it on demand if you like. And definitely feel free to chat with us. You can use the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, feel free to submit those. We'll try to answer those as we go through. But if we don't get to them, we'll try to, save some time at the end. And as always, if we don't get to those during the session today, you can email us, learnmore@shiphawk.com, and I'll have a slide at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to send those over and we can get a response back to you. And lastly, tell us what you think. You'll see a survey that'll pop up at the end of the webinar today. It'll pop up on your screen. We'd love to hear your feedback. So if you'll just take a couple seconds to answer that for us, that would be great. And now before we get started, I know we have a lot of customers on the call today, as well as some new faces. So for those of you that have not attended any of our previous life cycle of an order demos, I want to give you just a little bit of a background. This is number 6 in our 8-part series. And the goal with these is to show you really the full scope of how ShipHawk Fulfillment Management Solutions offer an end-to-end solution. They don't just automate your operation, but really how these solutions were developed to fit your business needs and help your company scale. So you'll see on the screen here, there are really 2 different life cycles that we've been talking about at the same time. And one is the actual fulfillment operation in this outer ring. And the second is the end customer experience. So you can see the fulfillment operation starts with receiving items into the warehouse, putting them away, which is where we started our series. Then we walked through cycle counting, advanced picking methods, and our cartonization optimization, which we call smart packing, and how all of those different workflows minimize travel, minimize handling, and maximize, fulfillment accuracy. So now that you've seen kind of how you can more accurately streamline those processes, today we're going to show you how it all comes together, how you can actually complete bookings for all different types of orders in one system and easily generate your shipping documentation without a lot of back and forth and manual processes. In our last 2 webinars, we'll actually touch on our freight audit and reconciliation solution and some analytics. So after these items have been shipped, you can really ensure that you're getting what you pay for. And then we'll close the loop with our dimensioner, since the process will start all over. You'll be receiving more inventory, and we want to make sure that you're capturing accurate weights and dimensions. So that's the fulfillment operation, kind of where we started, what is to come. And then in between there, we've had a couple webinars where we talked about the customer experience. So Autumn walked us through how we support in-cart rating, multi-carrier rating, EDI orders in one, platform, so you can easily receive orders from all of your customers and continue to deliver a good experience for those segments, making it easier for them to do business with you. So I'll drop the link to our landing page where you can watch any of these webinars on demand that have already happened, as well as register for those coming up. I'll put that in the chat here in just a second. And before I hand it over to Autumn, I wanted to do a quick audience poll just to learn a bit more about how you all are currently doing business and give Autumn a little bit of insight. So hold on one second. Let me launch this poll. You should see this pop up on your screen. So just take a couple seconds and let us know, are you currently using multiple systems for booking and generating shipping documentation? Or maybe you're already doing all this in one system and just looking for some tips on how to make it, work really perfectly for you. So while you're all filling that out, I'll hand it over to Autumn, our solutions consultant, who's going to walk you through the demo today. And I know we've got a lot to cover. So if you want to just go ahead and tell us what you're going to cover for us today.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So I'm kind of seeing some of those answers come in, and it looks like we're seeing about 92% of you using multiple systems for booking or generating documentation. So this is a very relevant webinar. So glad to hear that. Not glad to hear that you're using multiple systems, but at least we'll be talking about something that hopefully will be interesting to you today. So last time, as Kelly kind of already mentioned, we talked about how we can actually do packing in ShipHawk and how we can help the shipper automate parts of the packing process, verify that they're packing the right items with our Pack Verify feature, where they actually scan, verify all the items in the order, and overall just simplify packing for the shipper. So now we're going to jump right in after the order has been packed and talk about the actual shipping process. So you could be jumping into an order that's already been smart packed and there really isn't anything to do in ShipHawk packing wise. Or it could just be that the user just manually packed and scan verified those items. But whatever it may be, that order is now packed and ready to actually be booked and shipped. So for the shipping process, we're going to touch on a lot of things here. We're going to talk about address validation. We're going to talk about shipping policies, which is part of our rules engine. We touched on rating rules before in our in-cart rating webinar, if you remember that. So today we're going to talk about the other type of rule we have, which is called a shipping policy. We're going to look at booking and dispatching shipments. When we do that, this can also include dispatching third-party billed LTL shipments in some cases, which we'll go over. Document generation for all your different types of orders, including parcel and domestic, of course, but also international documentation, hazmat, LTL, and custom docs that we can create in the system, like customized packing slips, carton labels, or pallet labels. We'll take a look at source system writeback, which could be for NetSuite, Acumatica, Shopify, or many other sources. We want to make sure we get the right information back to your source system or your ERP, so that way you have that full traceability there. We close that loop on the order, and your shipper doesn't have to go back and forth between two systems. They can just ship in ShipHawk, but we'll get all the right information where it needs to be. We'll walk through external shipments, which can be used if you guys ever leverage, customer pickup or shipping with your own truck, or you use maybe a small regional carrier or other use cases as well. And we'll talk about our various user interface options. So we looked at these in the last webinar. We're not going to look at them too much, but we're going to revisit them for those of you who maybe didn't see that, just to kind of show you that we've got a lot of different options for UI if you don't want to use kind of our standard ones. So we'll mostly be looking at our standard UI or our proposed shipment UI today, but we'll also briefly cover our workstations mode, our ready to ship mode, and there's also a shipping UI in the WMS as well. We won't go over that today, but it's just another option that you have. So when you use ShipHawk, you have a lot of different options for what you want your shipper's experience to be like. So let's go ahead and get started with address validation here. So we do address validation for domestic addresses. So I'm actually going to jump over to ShipHawk here. We're going to jump into an order and we're going to take a look at that. So I'm going to come into this order here and we're going to see we've got this validate address here. And there's some options for this. So in my system, I have it just suggest the address. However, oh, you know what? Are you guys seeing my screen? Yeah, I think you guys are. Cool. Never mind. We're good. However, we can also make it just automatically choose the suggested address if you don't want your shippers to have to go through this process. There's different reasons you might want to do one or the other. Some people like to have the shipper make the choice because some customers call and say, hey, I know my address is not validated or it's not a real address, but please ship to it. It will get to me. So some people like to have this decision point, but you can also just have us automatically choose that. So I'm going to go ahead and say, use this address. Now it's going to say address verified there. So just to go over that one more time, our different options are either manual. You guys can just fully trigger when you want to verify the address rather than do it every time. Auto validation, which is my personal favorite, where it validates it when it comes into ShipHawk, but it doesn't make that change for the shipper. So they still get that decision point, but it will give them that, hey, you should review the suggested address, or that auto correction where we just automatically choose the validated address for your shipper. Something else we can do is we can actually prevent a user from booking a shipment with a non-verified address if you want. So if you really want to have that stopping point of, hey, if they don't validate it or if it's an incorrect address, I don't even want to allow them to book it. We can do that as well. And so the reason we do this is as you guys are probably familiar, if you ship to a non-verified address, you're going to get some chargebacks. It's going to become pretty expensive. So we can validate it during the shipping process before that happens to make sure it goes out. And some people are also validating it up front. So some people with, an e-commerce or when they're entering orders can also validate the address. Then you have a second checkpoint. There's a lot of different ways to do address validation, but we just want to have it as an option here. So next up, let's take a look at shipping policies. So our rules engine can be used to make sure that the right shipping method is being used when needed. By default, ShipHawk's going to choose the cheapest carrier and service for your order. However, that may not always be what you need. So our rules engine can help automate those situations where you maybe want a specific carrier, a specific service, a type of service to be used. It can also add accessorials, apply third-party billing details, set alternate return address, and a lot more. So let's actually take a look at that now. So I'm going to go into our settings here, and I'm going to go to our rules engine. And anyone in your ShipHawk account who is an admin user will be able to create new rules, see the rules, enable and disable them. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is just create a new rule here, just to show you what that looks like. I'm going to make a shipping policy. Again, we've got two different types of rules, and we talked about rating rules before. Rating rules impact your upfront rates. So if you're, showing real-time rates in Shopify or even in NetSuite or your custom website or anywhere where you want to be showing real-time rates to your customers, you can add rating rules to mark up those rates, mark them down, do free shipping for certain SKUs or product categories or all kinds of different things there. We kind of talked about that before, so we're going to just look at our shipping policies today. And those are really for automating how you actually want the shipment to be fulfilled. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, right? You can give your rules names, you can give them some notes, so that way you remember what it does, 6 months down the road, and you go, what does this rule do? You have some notes in there. And then I get to choose my rule application. So you can have rules apply all the time and say, hey, I always want to do this thing. I always want to, use a specific packing slip or apply some accessorial, which is probably not the case. So most likely you want to add some criteria in here. And we've got a lot of different criteria here. And it's not just that you can just choose one. You can choose multi-criteria. You can say, hey, if all these three things are true. We've also got or logic. If any of these things are true, and you can even nest that logic. So you can say, well, if any of these are true or both of these things. So just to say our rules can get really complex here, but let's take a look at some of those criteria. So maybe I want to say, hey, if my customer is a certain customer, right? We can bring in any custom reference number from your source system or from where you're pulling your orders. So we can say, hey, if I've got some reference number called customer and it starts with, ends with, contains, is one of, right? Any of these things. Let's say if it's customer A, I want to do something. Maybe that customer has specific third-party billing details. So I want to go ahead and do that. And I'll say, hey, I'll go ahead and set my shipment billing details. I want to use their third-party account. Here's their account number, zip code, country, if it's small parcel, or maybe it's LTL, and I want to go ahead and put their LTL third-party billing details in there. Or maybe I want to say, well, what if my shipment value is over a certain amount? So I can do that. I can say, well, if my shipment value is over or is between, maybe if it's over $200, or let's actually say over $2,000, well, then maybe I want to go ahead and add insurance for declared value. Right? So with, FedEx or UPS, I want to go ahead and add their insurance that they have. Maybe if I'm shipping a certain SKU, let's go ahead and change that, a certain SKU or even a product category or subcategory, which are things you can define either in ShipHawk in the product book, or we can actually, bring that in from your source system, depending on what your source system is. So maybe if I'm shipping a certain product category, maybe I've got product category contains like large furniture or something, right? Whatever that may be for you. Well, in that case, maybe I only want to use LTL or heavy furniture, right? It can go small parcel, but I know it's better for it to go LTL. It doesn't get damaged, whatever that may be. So I can go ahead and say, well, I want to use a specific kind of carrier and specify to LTL. Or maybe I only trust a certain carrier to ship something with that product category. So I want to specifically only use AAA Cooper because I know that they deliver that product really well or that type of product, and I don't have any issues with them. Or I can say, my weight is over a certain amount, right? My total items weight, if it's over this amount, then I want to add some, liftgate delivery or limited access or something interesting like that. right? All these different things. And then again, any custom reference number you have, if you've got something in your source system that's like partner or channel, or, maybe for your Amazon orders, you want to do something specific. So my channel name is Amazon and I want to use a specific carrier. Maybe I'm using Amazon transportation, or set specific packing materials. So we can also set specific carton labels, not packing materials, packing slip, carton label, or pallet label, right? I want to use an Amazon packing slip. You guys can have multiple different packing slips that you create in your system and say, well, in that case, I don't have an Amazon one, but let's say I want to use my Costco packing slip, right? Let's say my channel name was actually Costco. So all kinds of different things you guys can automate with your rules. I'll kind of open up our options here again, just because I touched on a couple of these, right? We talked about using a specific carrier. We talked about, we didn't talk about this, but you can exclude carriers. So maybe a certain carrier ships certain items and they happen to damage them a lot, or they're always late. So you want to exclude it in certain cases. Set that third party, or set a different carrier account. Include a return label automatically for a parcel shipment. Or, again, use those specific documents, a specific shipper's letter of instruction if you guys are using that, setting your different billing details, or setting your duties and taxes billing to sender or recipient. All kinds of things there that you can automate, applying alternate return address. And the point being, we don't want users to have to remember this kind of stuff. We don't want them to have to remember, well, every time I ship to, this specific customer, I have to go ahead and enter their third-party billing details, and I have to enter an alternate return address, and I have to make sure I use the right packing slip. We want to automate that and take away all that tribal knowledge so they don't have to think about it. We don't have all those micro decisions being made during the shipping process. So I'll go back here to my order. Let's go to that one we were looking at a little bit earlier, which was this one right here. And one thing you'll see is I've got a couple things happening. I've actually got an alternate return address being applied here. And I've got that FedEx was the requested service. So I've got a rule that says, hey, if I request FedEx up front, whether it was rated that way in Shopify or BigCommerce or some ERP or some e-commerce, or maybe in my source system, I chose that, I want to go ahead and apply FedEx Ground rather than choose the cheapest option, because this is what has been specifically selected by my customer. So I'm actually showing FedEx Ground there, but also, we could also be applying a specific packing slip, right? I'm using my Best Buy packing slip in this case. So that could be based on any of those rules as well. So let's talk now about booking and dispatching. So they've come in, their order is packed, and rules have been applied to set whatever they need, whether those may be accessorials. One thing we didn't talk about is a lot of people like to say, hey, if my address type is residential that I'm shipping to and it's going LTL, automatically add liftgate, right? I don't want my shipper to have to think about that. Just add it and we'll include it in the rate, make sure that gets shipped properly. But I come into my order, it's packed, my rules have applied, so all those little micro decisions have already been made for me. And now I can just go ahead and save and ship. So with small parcel, we're going to go ahead and book that shipment. Whoops, I played around with a lot of things here. Let's go grab my rate again. We're going to go ahead and book that shipment with small parcel, and we're going to print that documentation. There we go. Let's save that. We're going to print the documentation and we're going to update the ERP. So we'll talk about those things in a minute. But right now, point is we've booked it. It's good to go. Those labels come out. They put them on the box and they're done. With LTL, there's one more step for that process. So I'm going to jump into an LTL order here. When I go ahead and say, all right, I'm ready to book this, I'm booking this with T-Force. Again, all those micro decisions have been made through my rules automation. I'm going to go ahead and ship this, and it's going to give me one more screen here, which is just because LTL needs a little bit more information to ship. We need that ready time, close time, and maybe you need some pickup instructions and delivery instructions. So these things can be set based on some defaults, or you can edit them at this time, on an order by order basis if you need to. Same with pickup and delivery instructions. You can have defaults there, or you can just populate them at the time of the order. A lot of times that's the case. It's just, a per order basis when you need those. And we can also pull those from your source system as well. So you can actually map those in if a customer has typed in some specific delivery instructions that you want to make sure comes into ShipHawk. So I'll go ahead and enter a pro number here. And there's a lot of different ways to do pro numbers. We can upload an electronic book of pros depending on the carrier. For some carriers, we just grab the pro from them, like FedEx Freight, Worldwide Express, if you guys are using them. But I'll go ahead and enter one here and I'll book my shipment. And now with LTL, we're booking it, but we're also dispatching the truck. And as I mentioned before, maybe you're doing some third-party billing with LTL. If you guys are doing third-party billing, There we go. Someone's playing with my orders here. If you guys are doing third-party billing with your customers, say they have, a third-party AAA Cooper account. If you guys also have your own AAA Cooper account that we've got connected to ShipHawk, we can actually book that as well with them, which is really helpful because then you don't have to call and dispatch AAA Cooper. We're actually going to do that for you. So we can also dispatch the truck in certain cases for third-party billing, which again, just saves you an extra step, saves you that call, saves you kind of going into two different systems, right? We're calling that phone call a secondary system. So there we go, it's booked and everything's going to print out automatically. And so that's kind of booking and dispatching. Now let's talk about the document generation. So we didn't see anything print out. Everything's automatically going to print out of their printers. But to show you that, I'm going to show you all the different PDF versions of the documents that would auto print from their printers. So for LTL, we're going to go ahead and I'm actually going to jump to this shipment here. And we're going to get that BOL and we're going to get a packing slip if they have it, right? So I'll go ahead and open that packing slip right here. We've got a branded one here. So there's our Best Buy packing slip. We're also going to get that BOL here, which is a standard VIX BOL. And then if they needed any carton labels or pallet labels, we can do that as well. So I've got kind of an example of that here. That's a carton label, right? We've also got a carton label specific to EDI. So this is actually DSG's carton label. So if you guys are doing EDI, you're going to need those specific carton labels for the different vendors you're shipping to. And we can automatically generate those and print those out of the printer. For small parcel, we're just going to give you that label, right? You need that shipping label. And then again, if you're using carton labels, we can do those and we can make custom carton labels for you. Again, that packing slip. For international, we're going to print your international documentation, which can be your commercial invoice shown right here. That can be your USMCA if you guys are leveraging that document. And that can be your certificate of origin. So there's our international documents will automatically generate and automatically print out of their printers. You may be shipping hazmat, and for hazmat, we can make that OP 950, which you guys would print from a hazmat printer. We can set your hazmat printer so it comes out of the right printer that has that, candy striped paper. And then if you guys need it, a dangerous goods shippers declaration, which is only for specific hazmat, but when it's needed, we'll go ahead and generate and print that as well. And then we already saw our BOL, and we can also use a Worldwide Express BOL if you guys are leveraging Worldwide Express. They like to use their own, so we'll also generate that. And one thing I want to show you is our settings here. So I'm going to go to my settings in ShipHawk, and these are specific to your users. And you'll get to say, hey, what are my printers? And mine's actually printing to a PDF writer, which just means it generates the PDF on my computer instead. But your users can set their laser printer that they want things to auto print to, their thermal printer, and their hazmat printer, so that we can auto generate or auto print all those documents. And then they also get to say exactly what they want to auto print when they ship. So that way, when they hit that ship button or scan a command barcode to ship, because we also have command barcodes they can just scan instead of actually using a mouse. What do we want to actually print automatically for them? So they probably want a shipping label. If you guys are leveraging carton labels, you can enable that as well. For international, maybe I want that commercial invoice. And you know what? Maybe I need to print 3 of those per shipment. So I can go ahead and set that to 3. We'll automatically print that number. You can choose which documents you're using. So maybe you are using a USMCA, you can go ahead and select that. Shipper's letter of instruction, if you're using a freight forwarder and you need that document. Hazmat, you can go ahead and choose that hazmat document. And then the other one, the dangerous goods one, will also generate when it's needed, because that one is a case-by-case basis for when that's actually required. LTL shipments here, my bill of lading, shipping label, that's really just for FedEx Freight. They also do a shipping label, so you can print that if you use them. Maybe that custom pallet label, custom carton label, and packing slip. Maybe I'm printing all these things for LTL. You guys get to pick and choose what you're actually using. And then international LTL, what do you want to print there? Which documents are you guys using? I am seeing a question here. Let's check that. Regarding the customer labels, is this a billable activity from ShipHawk, or is that something we can do and maintain on our side? Great question. So it depends on the document. So we have, for packing slips, we have an 8.5 by 11 editor in ShipHawk that you can leverage and build your own if you want to. Or if you want us to help you with that, we can do that. And there's a cost to that, but it's really just, it's at cost for us. It's not something we charge a ton for. And then for 4x6s, if you need a custom 4x6 label, we can go ahead and make that for you. So we'll do those for you, whether that's a custom packing slip that's 4x6, carton label, or pallet label. And then there's also, if you're doing EDI, you may need the specific, retail compliant carton labels, right, with your SSCC code. And so we can actually pull those from SPS's library now and set that up for you. So we make sure we're getting, the right format for them. It's updated by SPS because they're maintaining that. And we can assign, hey, here's the REI carton label for your REI orders, or Target or Walmart or whatever it may be. Awesome. Cool. So that's our document generation. And again, point being, your shipper does not have to go make a custom commercial invoice. They don't have to go make a packing slip. They just ship it in ShipHawk, and everything that is necessary for that order prints out for them. They don't even need to know what documents are necessary, because they're just going to come out of the printer and they're going to go, okay, I have 5 documents that came out of my printer, or maybe it's 3 more likely, right? Maybe less than that. Okay, let me go ahead and put these in the box and put my label on the box. We're good to go. So just takes out all of the, okay, let me make sure I have all my documents. Let me go to this other system to generate it. Let me, maybe go to my ERP and get a packing slip, and maybe let me go to FedEx Ship Manager and get the shipping label, and then go to Excel because I have an Excel template that I'm using to make a commercial invoice, right? We don't want them doing any of that. We're going to automatically generate any of the documents they need, and that you guys are using for your different use cases. Awesome. So let's talk next about source system write back. So we're going to jump back over here for a second. So once the user books the shipment, a lot of things are happening again, right? We talked about it. For small parcel, we're booking the shipment, printing all the documents, and we're writing back to your source system. LTL, booking the shipment, dispatching the truck, printing the documents, and writing back to your source system. So that may be through a direct integration we have, or if you guys have a custom API integration, right, with some, other ERP or some custom system, you can also pull back the data you want through the API or by leveraging our webhooks. So as an example, we're going to take a look at NetSuite, and we're going to go into an item fulfillment here. But again, this could be whatever ERP you guys are using. Some people are just using Shopify as their ERP, and we can write back to Shopify as well. But we'll take a look here. So in NetSuite specifically, we're going to update that item fulfillment to shipped. If it's another source system, it's probably just called a shipment or something like that. We're updating it to shipped. We're going to go ahead and write shipping information in there. So you'll see here, how did I ship it? What was that ShipHawk shipment ID? What did it cost at the time of shipping? And this is important because you guys may be doing upfront rating where you're having the customer or giving the customer a real rate in cart, over the phone, whatever that may be. So this is the rate that you actually gave your customer, whether that was in your ERP or over the phone. You can see that here. And then we're also going to write back, well, what did it actually cost you? And so you have the data you need to see, are we making money on shipping? Are we losing money on shipping? How much should we be marking up shipments more? Whatever it may be. We'll see who shipped it. In this case, it was me. In our packages tab, we're going to go ahead and say, hey, what did we ship here? We shipped a 3-pound package with this one item, and there's that tracking number. And then in our ShipHawk package items, we're also going to show it split out by SKU. And so this is also going to be helpful to see more package detail here. And we'll let NetSuite load here for a second. If it takes too long, we'll move on to LTL. There we go, right there. So you can actually see, again, broken out by SKU. What did I ship? What was the quantity? What package was it in? So if you had a bunch of different packages, you can see for each SKU, what package was it in and what pallet was it on if it was LTL. If you're leveraging an EDI provider, we can also write that information to the fields that you need. So that carton SSCC code, we can put that in the field you need along with this data, right? Because you need all this data for your ASN to get generated. If you're using SPS, we can actually write directly to their fields. So you guys don't have to do anything. We write directly to SPS's custom tab, write all that information in there. Let's take a look at an LTL order here. So same thing. We just kind of write, hey, how did it actually ship out? This one was not rated up front. So there's no, pre-rated shipping costs. It was just, hey, just, ship it the cheapest way. We're going to show you how it went out. It went out with XPO with their standard freight service. It cost this much at the time of shipping. Here's who shipped it. I can go to my packages and see I shipped a pallet that was 450 pounds. It had this quantity of the SKUs on it. And there's that pro number right there. And then in my ShipHawk package items, it again breaks it out by SKU, quantities, carton SSCC codes, and what package and what pallet it was on. So this really helps when you have a bunch of different pallets or maybe a bunch of boxes, you can see exactly where everything was. So if your customer calls and says, hey, I didn't get these items, you can see, okay, well, you know, those were both in the second box. So you must have just not received the second box at all. Or, well, that doesn't make sense because one of those was in the second box, but you said you received this other item that was also in that box. So, you know, it gives you a little bit more data there on what actually shipped and what happened. I want to jump into something now called external shipments. So we kind of talked about, you know, if you're using small parcel carriers, LTL carriers, a 3PL that we're integrated with, but what if you just want to have the customer pick up the order, or you're using your own truck to ship that to them, or you've got some small regional carrier that doesn't have an API, but you want to use them because you've got really good rates with them, right? So in that case, we still don't want you having to go back into your source system to say, okay, here's how I shipped it. You know, this is how it went out. We still don't want the shippers having to exist in, you know, both ShipHawk and your ERP. So we have something called external shipments that we leverage for that. So I'm going to jump into an order here. Let's go into this one. And I'm just going to pull it up. By default, this one's going with FedEx. But let's say, you know what, the customer actually wants to pick this up. So I can actually set this as an external shipment here. And I can type in that carrier, and this can be anything you want. This can be a custom carrier. This can be, you know, literally customer pickup, if that's what it is in this case. Or it can be some small carrier or company truck, whatever it may be. I can put in a carrier type, let's say small parcel. This is a small parcel package, so it kind of makes more sense. They're picking that up. And then I can put in shipping price for customer pickup. It's probably zero. I'm probably not charging them anything. But if this was some other small regional carrier, you could say, hey, you know, they're charging me 120 or whatever it might be. And then if there's a tracking number, again, if you're using some other carrier, you can put that in. So that way we still have that. And then you can go ahead and save and ship. And so the nice thing about doing this is there's kind of two things. One is you can still process the order in ShipHawk, and we're going to write back to NetSuite how it actually went out. So in those fields you saw before of carrier, we're going to write customer pickup. So you have traceability of, okay, this didn't go out with the carrier. The customer actually just came and picked this up. What was that shipping price? It was $0 because they came and picked it up. We didn't charge them anything. We didn't get charged anything. And if you need documentation, so maybe you still need a packing slip for this for your customer, or maybe this is going with a regional carrier and it's, you know, some small LTO carrier, you still need a BOL or you still need carton labels. We can still generate all the documentation that you need when you save and ship. So the shipper still exists here. They can get all the necessary documents. We write back to the source system. How did it actually ship out? They're ready to move on to their next order. And kind of the last thing we'll talk about is our various user interfaces. So we've been looking at our standard UI. That's kind of what this is here. But we also have our workstations mode that we looked at last time, which is where you can see your unpacked items on the left, or we can actually smart pack it and already have it packed on the right-hand side. And then you can, you can scan those into the different boxes. And then once it's packed, you can actually just ship from this page as well. So that is something else you can do. You can also do that with pallet orders where you actually pack the boxes and then you pack the pallets and ship from here. So just a different UI to use. It's a lot simpler. It's a lot more central around that packing process. But then we can still always say, hey, go ahead and finish and ship that, print me my documents, and let me move on to my next order. And then we also have ready to ship mode, which is really for those orders that are smart packed, that are pretty much just ready to go. And all they need to do is just scan an order number to ship. And let's take a look at that quickly. So I'll go into an order here. And your users would be kind of just operating out of this ready to ship mode here. So this is what their screen would look like. They could go ahead and scan that order number, and we're automatically booking that, printing the documents, and writing back to the source system. So you can see everything would have just auto-printed right there. And I can see, hey, I printed that shipment. If I want to jump into it and see my details, I can. But really for the shipper, they get those documents, move on to the next one. But I can also see if I jump into here that we've shipped it, and we can see those documents as well. So now this has been shipped. I can come in here. I can always reprint documents if I need to and see all the details of how I actually shipped that. And ready to ship mode can also have that other step on the inside of verify item. So scan my order, but I still want to scan, verify those items, and then go ahead and print labels. So just a really quick way to do it. If you guys have your shipments pretty pre-configured, you've got all that rule automation happening, you've got smart packing working, and it's all just good to go, and they can just go ahead and save and ship. So that's how we ship in ShipHawk. Again, our biggest goal is for the shipping processes to be very similar. Whether your shipper is doing a small parcel order, LTL, hazmat, international, third-party build, an order that requires alternate return address, or an order that came through EDI, we want it to all be one shipping process to them. We don't want them to have to learn all these different processes for these different things that may be happening in your warehouse. For them, they just ship it the way they know how, and we generate all the documentation that they need. We automate all those extra bells and whistles of those accessorials, the billing details, the alternate return address. So that way they pack, they ship, they get their documents, they move on to the next order. If you want more info on any of those things, because that was a very high level overview of shipping, you can always reach out to learn more at shiphawk.com. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Kelly.
Yeah, thanks, Autumn. I think you kind of covered everything. I know that was a lot of information. So just a reminder to everyone, we do have a few minutes. If you want to submit any questions that you might have before we wrap up today, feel free to use the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. And while y'all are taking a minute to submit any questions, I think, Autumn, can we jump to one more slide? I think there's one extra slide. There we go. I know I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the call today that this is, stop number 6 in our series of 8, the life cycle of an order series. So it's step number 6 in our 8 parts. So there are 2 more sessions coming up next month. They'll kind of round out our series. I dropped the link to the landing page in the chat. So if you want to get registered for either of these or go back and review any of the sessions that Autumn covered today, those are all available there for you. And it looks like I do have one question for you, Autumn. Roy asked, does the TMS solution work alongside WMS solution, or are they separate? From a warehouse shipper perspective, would they have to jump between the WMS and the TMS interfaces? Good question.
Yeah, super good question. So there's some options there. So generally, what I see people doing most of the time is on our WMS, they're walking around with that handheld, right? You're doing your receiving, your put away, your picking. Generally, at some point in the packing and shipping process, you end up at kind of a pack and ship station that has a computer there. So a lot of times, yes, people are kind of picking in the WMS and then switching to their computer. They're at that station now where they're actually doing that packing, switching into the TMS for that packing and shipping. But there are options there. You can stay in the WMS the whole time. You can pack and ship through our WMS as well, and it will leverage our TMS in the background. Before your shipper, it's within the same UI, same look of the WMS. But yeah, we have a lot of people kind of mixing and matching with that. So some people are picking and packing in the WMS, and then they switch to a computer for that shipping portion in our TMS, right? It's really a UI choice of what they prefer, what they like better. But a lot of times they do end up at a workstation for packing and shipping. So they are kind of just using a computer at that point with a mouse or maybe a scanner, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, your fancy WMS scanner, literally just like a basic barcode scanner to maybe scan your tote and go ahead and actually go through that shipping process. So a lot of options for the workflow there.
Yeah, and I would definitely say if you want to kind of dive into that a little more, you can chat with your account manager. They can certainly share some further best practices or set up a different one-on-one call for you all, and maybe with Autumn to kind of help talk about what would work best for you. And I think that's it. I think we've covered all the questions for today. Thanks, Autumn, so much for going into all the different processes and how we can really streamline the different workflows. And thank you all for joining us. Thanks for your questions, and hope you all enjoy the rest of your afternoon.